Thank you, Ms.
Yes.
Condiglia?
Ready.
Excellent. Once again, I'd like to apologize for everyone for holding these proceedings up. I'm sitting in the place of John Rice tonight. This is a continuation of a hearing that was commenced last month. I believe it was agreed that will go approximately 3 hours. So as we approach the hour of 90, can you not hear me? Oh, sorry. As we approach the hour of 9:30, I will be looking to the parties to try to find a good time to wrap this up. A couple of administrative matters, and then we'll get right to the testimony. First off, my office did receive a letter from Dr. Roberta Winters regarding the Radnor League of Women Voters. Has Mr. Bowl and Mr. Condiglia received copies of the letter?
I did.
Okay.
I have not.
Okay. I only have one copy, but we will provide you with one. I'd like to have this just marked. I believe this letter was forwarded to my office in response to some questioning that was directed towards the League of Women's Voters representative at last month's meeting. I'd like to have this exhibit marked as Board Exhibit 1. I don't believe there's a Board Exhibit yet started. And that being said, it is a letter to Mr. Higgins as Vice President of the Board of Commissioners dated July 31st, 2014, authorizing that Ms. Gayla McCluskey is authorized to appear on behalf of Radnor Township League of Women Voters. It also contains as an attachment the bylaws of the League of Women Voters of Radnor Township.
I did not receive that. I received another letter from another party, not that.
Okay, I will provide both of you copies of this letter. Secondly, is there anyone here who wishes to become a party at this point in time who didn't ask to become a party at the last hearing? Okay. Sir, if you could please stand up, state your name and address.
Excuse me, sir. He has to go to the mic. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Philip R. with 181 Meredith Avenue in Rosemont. Last name is spelled A-H-R. Thank you. First name is Philip with one L. 181 Meredith, M-E-R-E-D-I-T-H. Rosemont, thanks.
Hold on one second, sir. Mr. Condiglia?
I have no objection.
Okay.
By the way, I should mention that I'm here on behalf of representing the Garrett Hill Coalition, which is a neighborhood association.
Then I have to object.
Okay.
If he was here individually, I have no objection to it. There's a lot more involved when you have an association trying to enter as party status.
Do you have any questions regarding this witness as a representative for this group?
Yes. Does the Garrett Hill Coalition, is that a incorporated association?
It is an association. It's not incorporated, but it is. We have a tax ID number, and I'm sorry. We're not incorporated, but it is a neighborhood association. We have a tax ID number, and we're registered that way.
And what's your position with the Garrett Hill Coalition?
I'm officially the treasurer.
All right. And was there a meeting regarding entering party status by Garrett Hill Coalition?
Yes, there was.
And was there a vote taken?
There was a vote.
And how was that vote taken? Was it taken by email? Was it taken by personal, or how was it taken?
We had a executive board meeting on August the 6th, and a majority of the board was there, and the vote was taken that way.
And how many people were on the executive board?
5, 3 of the 5 were there.
And is the executive board elected by the association?
Yes, it is.
And it was a vote. When was a vote taken to elect the executive board?
I think there's 5 members, and 4 of them were re-elected or appointed in January 25th of this year at a community meeting.
Okay, so are they appointed or are they elected?
They're elected. They're elected.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Yeah. Mr. Bola, any?
You indicated 181 Meredith. I'm the outsider. Is that Road, Drive,
Avenue.
Avenue?
Thank you.
Radnor?
That's correct.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you. No objection.
Mr. Condiglia,
I still have an objection to the association.
Correct, and that objection is overruled. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? If you could please approach, present your name Your address?
Sarah Pilling, Pilling, 29 Garrett Avenue in Rosemont.
And Ms. Pilling, are you here representing yourself or a group?
Well, there's a little bit discussion as to whether I'm under the Friends to Preserve Radnor or myself, but I'd prefer to be here under myself.
Okay.
No objection.
No. Mr. Bowl?
S-A-R-A?
Yes.
Thank you. No objection.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Is the board have anything administrative at this time? All right. Mr. Conigli, I believe it's still your case.
Yes, I have some additional exhibits that I'll hand up that are relevant for this evening. I've already given them to Mr. Bola.
Yeah, if we have one for the record, that would be good. Okay. Do you have enough?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
What I've handed up, the first is just a list of exhibits, and it's just supplemented by A13 through A14, and you'll notice that all of those deal with landscaping and buffering for the CICD, and that leads us to our first witness. Mr. Checo?
I do. Daniel Chieco, C-H-I-E-C-O. I'm sorry.
And Dan, I'm showing you what's been marked as A13. Is this a true and accurate representation of your curriculum vitae?
Yes, it is.
And by whom are you employed?
I'm employed by Socorro Wells Appel. We're a landscape architecture firm in Haddonfield, New Jersey.
And how long have you been employed by that firm?
Combined over about 12 years.
Okay, and you have a degree in landscape architecture?
Yes, I do.
And from where?
From the Pennsylvania State University.
And are you registered as a landscape architect in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
Yes, I am.
And how long have you been a landscape architect?
I've been practicing for over 28 years now.
Yeah. Bill, I don't know if we're going to need him to qualify him as an expert, but I don't know if you have any questions on qualifications.
Just anyone who's graduated from Penn State, I generally don't question, but, sir, you've been qualified as a witness before in townships in Montgomery County and Delaware County?
Yes, I have.
How about in Radnor Township? Have you been qualified to testify?
Not in Radnor.
Okay. In any of the surrounding townships?
Cheltenham, Philadelphia.
And have you testified as an expert in the Court of Common Pleas of any of the 5 counties?
No.
Okay. All right, I don't have any other questions nor objection.
You're going to have to talk into that mic. If you come sideways, you should move the mic a little bit.
I don't have any other questions, and nor do I have an
So
objection.
I'll ask that he be qualified as an expert in landscape architecture, please.
Thank you. So the board qualifies a witness as such.
Okay. Dan, have you provided schematic and conceptual landscape plans for this particular development?
Yes, I have.
Okay, I'm going to refer you first to what's been pre-marked as Exhibit 14A. Can we put that up? Oh, yeah. You should have that there, but we're not getting any screen. There we go.
There we go.
Now, 14A represents a landscaping schematic for what we've been referring to as the West Lancaster parking lot.
Correct.
And that actually replaces a prior exhibit that's been marked as L3.01, which is part of A1B.
That's correct.
All right. And could you describe what this schematic represents?
This schematic is an example of a buffer planting plan, and it's specific to the West Lancaster parking lot, and it's supplemental to the document that you mentioned in that it goes further. It's much more detailed than the conceptual diagram that was submitted. So you can see in the light green all of the existing trees in this particular area have been located, which are a substantial buffer in themselves. And then we added to it, you can also see where the parking configuration has changed, and it's been rotated 90 degrees, and that was after comments were made about making this parking lot better. This diagram also shows what we would propose with new plant material to supplement the existing plant material. And there's really two situations depicted here or illustrated. You can see where all the existing trees are located. Our goal is to save as many of those trees as possible and to supplement them. And then there's other areas, like to the right of this diagram, where you see the heavy buffering and the darker green. That's all new plant material. So it's a combination. It's really goes every, foot by foot. There's different conditions, and we're addressing that to create a solid buffer throughout, utilizing the existing plant material as well as new plant material that meets or exceeds the township ordinance.
And we're going to show sections and exhibit sections of this buffer later on?
Yeah, there's 5 sections that are taken through this buffer and further down to the east, and they will be presented after the next plan, which is...
Okay, I'm going to refer you to 14B now. And perhaps this is the area of the parking structure. And at first, we can just go back to L303, because I believe 14B supplements L3.03. Is that right, Dan?
That's correct.
And so if we just hit on 3.03 and show the board what 3.03 represents, and then describe how we are supplementing.
So 3.03 shows not only the buffer against the R100 line, but it also shows the landscape proposed within the quads and the streetscape.
So it shows a streetscape for the Performing Arts Center, as well as the parking structure.
As well as the parking structure. Now, what this next exhibit, the additional exhibit shows is...
Which is now we're referring to 14B?
14B, shows buffering on the opposite side of the parking garage, a 15-foot wide landscape buffer. We're proposing that there be a series of large upright deciduous trees and a proposed shrub mass that line that entire slope. And then as it transitions to the loading dock of the pack, it would switch to an evergreen tree buffer. And when we get to the sections, you'll be able to see that there's also a berm on the opposite side of Pike Field that has a substantial amount of plant material that is buffering this side of these two structures.
I'm just saying the opposite side of Pike Field. Are you talking about the properties bordering, or the berm bordering Barleycone, the rear of the Barleycone properties?
Yes, the Barleycone neighborhood.
And then, okay, going to, first let's go to L3.02.
Mr. Caniglia, you're referring to previous plans as L something. Have they been entered as exhibits?
They've been entered as exhibits as part of A1B.
Okay.
Whenever I refer to an L exhibit, it's part of what's been marked A1B.
I just want to clarify that
Yes,
for the
thank you.
record. Thank
Yes,
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So referring to what is A1B L3.02, could you tell the board what that represents?
This was also part of the original plan that was submitted that shows not only the buffering against the R100, but also the courtyards in between the buildings and the streetscape on Lancaster. So the diagrams that were submitted tonight, the two plan views,
Before we move off this one, 3.02, is there also additional buffer here on the south side of the tracks on what we've been calling the Aldwin Triangle?
Oh, yes, there's additional, so there's two layers of screening here. There's screening on the north side of the R100, which is on the Villanova property, and also within the proposed screening within the Aldwin Triangle as well.
And then also, there's a streetscape showing conceptual plantings as well?
Conceptual streetscape along Lancaster Avenue, that's correct.
And I believe there's some in the courtyards as well, is that right?
That's correct.
Now, I believe you started to refer to, I believe 14C would be the next exhibit.
Okay, Exhibit 14C is a plan view going all the way from the West Lancaster parking lot all the way across Pike Field to the Barleycone neighborhood. And on this plan, in red, are depicted the section lines where each one of the next 5 sections that we're going to show were taken. And the sections stretch basically from the rear wall of the residences all the way through the parking lot and in some cases the proposed buildings.
So if we go to the first one, which is 14D, and if you could tell where is that a section of, and can you describe what it represents? And in particular, I believe this is referring to a parking lot which is actually being depressed as well.
Yes, this is on the previous plan was Section 1, which is the section taken furthest west on the key plan.
Which is the West Lancaster?
West Lancaster parking lot. You can see in this section, you can see to the right is the back wall of the residence, the adjacent residence. And then you can see the distance between the residence and the R100 line, and the R100 line at that point is sunken. And then you see the existing slope that goes back up to the existing buffer. Those trees illustrated, kind of screened back in light green, are the existing trees, which measure anywhere from 75 to 80 feet tall. We're proposing right on the property line a safety fence that's 6 feet high. And then also depicted here is the new planting that supplements the existing planting. This would be low, and it would transition depending on if there's existing plant material we're working around or if it's totally new planting. But what you see in what the blue line represents is the height of the planting upon installation. So, and we're, as I mentioned earlier, we're meeting or exceeding the ordinance requirements as far as initial planting heights. So you can see the initial planting height, and then within 10 years of planting is the darker green and outlines of the other plant material as it matures. Also, you can see in response to some of the comments, the parking lot was regraded and reconfigured so that it's actually cut into the slope, so it's depressed and it forms a berm there. That's 3 to 4 feet high. Now that condition changes as you move further to the east. It gets a little bit more level, but for a good portion of the parking lot, it's depressed down so it blocks headlights and views of the parking lot from across the way.
I'm referring to 14E.
14E is the second section on the key plan, a little bit further to the east. And here you can see that the rear of the residence, the adjacent residence, you see the SEPTA line is still in cut at this point and rising up to, on our side of the property, there's the fence line again, the safety fence, the existing vegetation, and the proposed new vegetation. At this point, it's not in cut on our side of the berm as much as it is further to the west.
And moving to 14F?
14F is actually Section 3.
And that is across, is near the residence areas?
That section is taken through Aldwin Triangle. So that stretches from Aldwin Triangle all the way through the proposed building. And you can see in this section the existing vegetation on the right side is Aldwin Circle, the mature trees in Aldwin Circle. And then the proposed plant material, additional plant material we're placing on the Aldwin Triangle property. And then the septa line is still in a cut there. And then the proposed plant material buffer on our property. At some points along this stretch of the buffer, it will be totally new planting in other areas where saving as many existing trees as possible.
Going to G, I believe? 14G?
That's Section 4 on the key plan. That's also through the Aldwin Triangle, and it stretches all the way to the building. At this point, you'll see that the R100 line is actually raised, almost forming its own berm. They're above existing grade, and you can see how much higher than the Aldwin Triangle it is in that section. And then you can see the proposed buffer planting at planting time in blue, and then the proposed would be after 10 years. You can also see the cooling tower. And we're proposing that be walled or screened, and also surrounded by plant material for buffering purposes.
And how high? Do you know how high that cooling tower is, or should I ask one of the architects that question?
Yeah, maybe I know it's drawn to the scale that we got from the mechanical engineer.
All right, but it looks like it's kind of no higher than what the vehicles would be.
Yeah, it's recessed into the slope there.
How about trash receptacles? Are they buffered as well?
Trash receptacles would be buffered not only by the property line buffer, the 20-foot wide buffer, but additional plant material around the sides to completely screen it.
Referring to 14H?
14H, this kind of supplements the plan view that was previously on the screen that shows the parking garage, and it shows a section through from Barleytone all the way to the proposed parking deck. And you can see the existing plant materials on the right, the trees depicted, as well as there's an existing berm and swale. And there's some supplemental planting that was done at some point, and that's actually to scale there, those evergreens that were planted there. And then on the opposite side, this is where we were proposing the upright deciduous trees and evergreen ground cover on the ground plane. And also upon planting and at 10 years.
So are you retaining existing buffer vegetation and incorporating it with new plantings on these sections that we've been viewing?
Yes. Yeah, there's some areas where we can't save all the trees, but because of new grading, but our goal is to save every tree possible and supplement to create a very effective visual screen.
How about on species and size of trees?
We will meet or exceed the ordinance or the township ordinance as far as sizes upon planting. And we have reviewed the recommended plant species list from the township, and we will meet that as well. I do have some plants. I guess I could, if you'd like to hear some of the plants that I would propose
Sure.
be in this buffer.
And actually, this has to be reviewed by the Township Shade Tree Commission during the land development process, is that right?
That's correct. So as far as sizes go, the ordinance for evergreen trees is the at time of planting is a 5-foot height evergreen tree, and we're proposing 8 feet upon planting. Deciduous trees, township minimum is 8-foot high, 2.5-inch caliper. We're proposing 3-inch caliper. And flowering trees, ordinance doesn't have a specified size for flowering trees, but we're proposing 2-inch caliper. And shrubs, we're proposing 3 to 6 foot high shrubs, evergreen shrubs upon planting. Some of the plant material that we feel would really supplement the existing buffer and complement it would, for example, canopy trees could be such as red maple, sugar maple, white ash, sweet gum, white oak, evergreens that we feel would really help. And all this depends on the existing conditions, sun, shade, soil, wet, dry conditions. So this is all detailed, as I mentioned, as we go across the buffer, the conditions change. So that's why there's a list here. But evergreen trees, we would propose to use white pine, Douglas fir, American holly, eastern red cedar, Norway spruce, cryptomeria. Small ornamental or understory trees, these would be trees that stay fairly low but are very dense and multi-stemmed and form an excellent buffer. Amelanchier, river birch, American hornbeam, eastern redbud, dogwood, sweet bay magnolia, and large evergreen shrubs, holly, viburnum, juniper, Chamaecyparis, taxus. And there's also large deciduous shrubs that could also form a very nice buffer and offer year-round interest, visual interest, such as clethra, summer sweet or clethra, spice bush, viburnum, American elder, and witch hazel. Probably 99% of the plants I just read are native to this area and are on the list of recommended trees in the township.
Will the proposed buffer comply with the township ordinance and the CICD?
Yes, it will.
And will the proposed buffer adequately screen the proposed CICD and their structures from any adjacent residential properties?
Yes, it will.
No further questions.
Sir, would you pronounce your last name for me again?
Kieko?
Your microphone. Thank you. Is it the university's plan not only to plant the materials you've just described, but also to maintain them?
Yes.
So that in the event, is there anything in the ordinance about what happens in the event of the death of any of this planting material or its non-usefulness?
Yes, there is, as you mentioned, about maintenance of the plant material and then replacement upon material that does.
All right, is there any particular period of time, how long a tree has to be dead before it's, or a bush has to be dead before it's replaced, do you know?
Before it's replaced?
Yes.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay. If we could go to the various sections, A14C, the section 1, what do we call that, a schematic, a buffer, a section? What have you depicted there on these various sections? Is that a...
I think he's referring to 14C. John.
14C?
Well, no, what, actually, I got off track there. 14D, E, and F, what are they depicting? Are they called sections or schematics?
They're sections.
Okay. So you've shown us then the 5 sections at which these types of materials are to be installed, correct?
Correct.
All right. What's the... Is there a generalized width or a standard width of the buffer area for each of these, or does it vary from section to section?
It's consistently 20 feet across the R100 line.
What prevents it from being wider?
It depends on the existing condition. If there is a lot of existing trees, that we can't plant within their root zones or damage them. So it really depends on the existing condition. If there's a lot of existing trees, we would want to stay out of those root zones. If there's no existing trees, it would be a total solid 20-foot buffer of new plant material.
Okay. My question is it the plan itself, the location of the features under the plan that prevents the width of the buffer area or yard to be greater than 20 feet?
In most cases, yes.
Right now, what is up is, what exhibit is that? That's 14A? Is there, looking at 14A since it's up, is that a lane, an access lane between the vegetation and what looks like parking islands?
Is that where your cursor just was?
Right there.
Yeah, that's a drive aisle in the
Okay.
parking lot. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, so I assume the only way that it could be made any wider would be to shift the whole development in the other direction, correct?
Yeah, the pavement would have to shift north.
All right, is there any reason why that can't be done? Can the development be fit in if you were to do that?
I guess the civil engineer would have to
Okay.
testify on that, but I would think not, just based on the amount of parking that's required. And I know this lot was already rotated 90 degrees to make larger islands that are going kind of in the north-south direction, and also cut this parking lot into the grade to create a berm and block headlights. So I think when all that is accomplished, it would be very tough to move everything to the north.
All right. So the cutting of the parking lot that you've just referred to, at least in portions, that's a development that has occurred since the last hearing?
Yes, previously it was flush there.
Okay. And that's as a result of conversations with the township staff and the neighbors and the residents?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm gathering that what you're testifying to, sir, is visual barriers, correct?
Yes, visual.
All right. In your opinion, is there any sound dampening that is accomplished as a result of this buffering?
There's some sound buffering, but for the most part, plant material is not a very effective sound buffer.
All right. Then going to A14C, which shows the various 5 sections. The first section, 1 to 2, shows us that there are houses. What is that road along there? Is that where the residents are? Is that Aldwin?
The road behind the
Yes.
residences?
Yeah, what's designed to be buffered? Is that
Yes, that's
the Aldwin residences?
yes.
And the buffering appears, again, I'm just looking at this one exhibit, at where section 2 begins, there's depicted a little square feature there, right there, yeah, up to your left, right there. What is that, sir?
That's an existing structure, yeah. This map is kind of a base of existing and proposed information, so you're seeing a structure that's currently there that will not be there.
Okay, then it doesn't appear to be any buffering at all in this part of section 2.
Oh, this plan is strictly for showing the section locations. It's not meant to show proposed plant material. It's strictly a key map to show where the sections are taken.
All right, so what shows us that in section 2 there, we're going to have what you opine to be conforming buffering?
The section itself, and then the typical, I guess, plan example that was added. This would be the kind of a typical way that we would approach the buffer. I don't know the exact number.
I think he's asking if it's continued.
Yeah, it's continual, and the supplemental plans that were provided are kind of an example of what would take place all the way across this buffer.
So there are no holes in this visual barrier
No holes.
across the entire distance depicted on Exhibit A 14C?
On A14C. Yes, that's correct. Oh,
All right, is there another witness, sir, who's going to testify as to sound dampening?
I think he needs to clarify the last one, Bill.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
think there's an area by the bridge.
yeah, I think there is an area by the bridge where the buffer will kind of stop and start again as it goes from east to west. So there will be some space there where you just can't continue the plant material there
Because of the bridge.
because of the bridge. Yep.
Is there any way to shield that, although not right there, is there any other way to visually shield that? From the, I mean, I'm looking at the homes they're right there, they're smack right there. And I know one of our parties, I think, lives there. Ms. Long lives there in that home, not the first home, but the second. So between her home and that parking lot, will there be any buffering?
No. No, I think he's asking, is there any buffer? I don't know.
Do you understand which home I mean?
Not, yeah, it's not.
That one.
That one,
You're good.
okay.
Where his cursor is.
Yeah, we can stipulate Ms. Long lives at that home. The one to the right is actually owned by Villanova.
Right, right. So is there any buffering, I'm asking that specifically as to the Long property, any buffering there between that and the parking lot, it looks like?
There will be slightly to the west there, but right where the bridge structure is, there's no room for planting there. But just past it, there is space.
All right,
Where
if you would go to your left with that cursor.
Yeah.
Keep going. Right there, we're
Right-
going to get
right
some
there.
buffering?
Yes, from that point where you mentioned that rectangle.
Right.
That's not really there, so that whole area could be buffered, yes.
And will be?
Yes.
Okay. And it's clear, sir, that this buffering plan that you're presenting tonight under the ordinance, this is still conceptual. There's still a lot of work to be done on this. If conditional use is approved, it would be finally subject to land development approval, correct?
Correct, yeah, we would, as I mentioned, go, foot by foot, existing condition by existing condition, and design specifically to each area's conditions, whether they be wet, dry, full sun, shade, and create a buffer that is thick, lush, and continuous.
All right. You mentioned that you're going to make every effort to maintain the existing vegetation, and there is a good deal of it there. I did walk along there. Is that existing vegetation along the R100 line, that's all going to remain there, essentially? Is that what you're saying?
On the Villanova property,
Yes.
there are some areas where some trees have to come out due to grading, but we're making every effort to save every tree that possible in that zone.
Show me where some of the trees will be coming out on the R100 line.
I guess if we go to, what's the exhibit number on this?
That is.
The first plant?
Yes, the first one, 14.
What is it?
14A, okay. So to the far right there, where it's dark green, there's a little stretch there. To the far right, yep, right there, that's all new plant material. So in that area, the contours are pretty much going to almost to the property line. So there's no way to save the existing vegetation there.
So it's the construction that'll remove the vegetation, then there'll be replanting.
Yes, per the ordinance, yep.
What's a safety fence, sir?
The safety fence is proposed to be kind of a post and wire mesh fence, 6 feet high, to prevent people from crossing onto the tracks there. So it'll be, you'll be able to see through it, and animals will be able to cross through it, small mammals. It's not an opaque barrier. It's basically a wire mesh fence with wood posts. We thought that it would match the character of what's there, and provide safety to keep people from crossing the tracks there.
So this won't have any impact on sound?
No.
Is there anything in your buffer plans that you've presented thus far that does dampen sound, other than the slight dampening that you referenced by the foliage and plantings?
The cutting the parking into the slope and creating a small berm there will help. And as you mentioned, just the density of the plant material will help soften. And then as you get further east, where the Aldwin Triangle is, that just the sheer distance across that space will help.
All right. Trying to get a sense of, and I agree, the berming's a great idea to help on the sound dampening, at least one way to do it. I'm trying to get a fix on, and I won't go too much longer with you, but on where that berming will be by reference to Exhibit A14C in your sections. Can you describe what sections will have berming and what won't?
Section 1 a berm will be created by the cutting.
And that's the one that's 3 feet high approximately?
It's about 4 feet, 3 to 4 feet there.
Okay.
Section 2, it would be tough to berm there and maintain those existing trees just because of we can't place fill on those. We can't build up there and place fill on the roots of those existing trees and keep them. So that there's, I think in Section 2, it's a slight rise there, but not as significant as Section 1. Any place where we're putting a totally new buffer in, we would be capable of putting a berm in, a raised berm, as long as it meets the 3-to-1 slope maximum in the ordinance.
All right, so that's going to be something that you're going to attempt to achieve, again, during land development.
Exactly, yep.
Where is it? What is it? One moment, please. I've got a list of questions here to look at. I've been asked to ask you, how are you going to irrigate these plantings?
That's kind of a question that we'd get into during land development. And really, it depends on the species that are selected, if they're drought tolerant, if they even require irrigation after they're established. So, our goal typically now is to plant species that can tolerate these conditions and not to irrigate if we're looking toward lead principles.
All right. And I do know there was a meeting recently with Villanova and the residents specifically regarding buffering. You're aware of that? Were you at that meeting?
No, I wasn't at the residents' meeting.
Well, I wasn't either, but I have some notes of it. There was mention there and in other documents of a potential for sound dampening walls to be constructed. Is this something that you're going to be able to testify to?
No, that's not.
Somebody else's?
Yeah.
Sure? Okay. Will the landscaping that's proposed here effectively shield the lighting that will be occurring in that parking area and behind the dorms and behind the parking garages?
Yes, the plant material will be designed for full visual screening, so
So you have evergreen shrubs?
evergreen shrubs, evergreen trees. In some areas, conditions might vary, depending on the existing vegetation that's there, and a lot of evergreen trees don't like shady areas, so we'd have to go with tall evergreen shrubs in that case.
Right.
But the idea would be to create a complete visual screen of lighting and views continuously across the property line.
All right. And is there any effort to mitigate the view shed or sound or light around the pedestrian bridge? Any special effort other than what you've just testified to regarding the buffering?
I guess that would be also, have to be
Somebody else. Okay.
to testify on that.
Has anyone at the university or you, sir, been in touch with PICO about opportunities to plant in its right-of-way?
I have not, but do you know how?
Yeah, Bob has.
Bob has?
So someone has, and that's something that's being explored by the university? And will be able to be answered during land development, correct?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. What's this one? Long length? The Section 1 berming along West Lancaster parking lot, how long is that, sir? What's the length of that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What's the length of the berming along the West Lancaster parking lot?
Before it becomes more of a flush condition?
Yes. Approximately.
Let's see here, scale-wise, 200 feet. 400 feet?
And you would acknowledge that the buffering would be planted prior to construction beginning?
Yes, if that's the ordinance requirement. Well, in situations where there is grading going on and new buffer going on top of that proposed grading, that would have to take place during the right time of year also.
But still prior to construction?
Anything that could be planted where there's no grading going on prior to construction.
Sure. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thanks.
Okay, at this point, we're going to have the other parties ask their questions, and after that, we'll have the board and myself ask questions, and then after that, if there's any redirect, we'll allow that. All I ask for the other parties, I'll call your name. If you could please come up to the mic and ask your questions up here, I'd appreciate it. And if you could get all your questions out at once, that way we'll try to get through this as quickly as possible. Ms. Lang, I see you're all ready to go, so let's start with you.
Thank you for your presentation. Tish Long, L-O-N-G. I thought the plant material you're offering is quite wonderful. I just have two questions. My first question is, at the time of installation, will there really be a complete visual screening, or will that take 10 to 15 years for that to occur? Because we're talking about 8-foot trees going in, correct? So I'm just questioning the validity of that.
The spacing will be provided between the, at time of installation would provide complete low-level screening, but once you get above the 8-foot mark, it would be a matter of time before.
So how much
Upper.
time would that really take for the neighbors to really realize that there really is a visual buffer, in your opinion?
From the parking lot or the screen of the...
From the rear of the
screen
Aldwin
of the-
properties?
Oh, from the Aldwin properties. Parking lot, upon planting, within probably 5 years, you will not see the parking lot.
5 years, okay. My other question really regards the triangle, and I know that you have provided a plan for the corner next to the SEPTA parking lot. And my question is twofold. Could you possibly berm that area to also provide additional screening? I know we discussed it at the meeting with Villanova last Friday, but I'm just giving out that question again to see if that would be a possibility.
Yeah, if, when we locate the existing trees in that area, I could better answer that question. If we could do that without impacting the root zones the critical root zones of the mature trees in that area, that would...
There are really not many mature trees in that area. I'm talking about on the Aldwin Triangle itself.
back here, where we're proposing.
And I believe there are no trees there. There's an existing, a bit of a berm and sort of a meadow feel, which leads me to my next question. Do you have any plans for the triangle itself in terms of reforesting the existing little grove of trees there, which is pretty dilapidated over the past 15 years? And also any thought to perhaps putting a meadow garden in, which I think would be wonderful for that space?
At this ti-
Just for clarification's sakes, why don't we break this up into three questions?
Three
'Cause
questions,
I don't
fine.
think you actually fully answered her first question once you realized where she was asking for the berm. So is it possible to put a berm on the Aldwin Triangle?
If it's possible, if there's no trees that would be impacted by that, there's definitely room to put a berm in. I mean, I'm not sure how high it would be at this point without studying it, but
I think that would also add to the buffer quality and the privacy and really protecting the quality of our neighborhood. I think that might be a thought. And also, we are concerned about the triangle. It is in disrepair. I mean, is there any thought to how you would envision that to be? I know it's a definite path in which the students get from the South Campus over to main campus. Do you have any ideas for the triangle
at this point, it hasn't been studied, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Long, you had one last question regarding a garden, rain
Oh,
garden?
the meadow garden, yes.
Okay.
Also, I brought this up on Friday. My thought would be Longwood Gardens has a wonderful new meadow garden installation. I know Bowman's Hill has a wonderful meadow garden. Mars Arboretum does. And I think it might be something that Villanova thinks about. It's a great stormwater opportunity to take, and I think that this property would lend itself extremely well to putting a meadow garden in. So I would, there's a wonderful book out by John Greenlee you might want to look at. It's wonderful. And I would think that might be a fairly inexpensive way of doing it and making it much more attractive. So I would hope that you would consider that. Thank you.
Is Ms. McCluskey here?
Mr. Nelson, I don't have any questions for this witness, but I do have a process question, and that is when we can bring up the fact that developing the west parking lot in commercial office is inconsistent with the comprehensive land use plan.
When the applicant, Villanova University, has presented their case, the township has presented their case, each of the parties will be able to present their own case at that time. At that time, you will be able to bring up any testimony or evidence you want concerning the impact this proposal will have on the township and how it complies or does not comply with various township documents.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Is it Leonardi? Leonard? that correct, sir?
Oh, Rick Leonardi, Alban Lane. I just have one quick question. You've been very careful to indicate that the buffering that you're talking about sounds cool, but is meant to be exclusively visual buffering. There was some slight indication you were willing to grant that there was some attenuation to sound also possible as a result of the landscaping. I just wish to bring to the board's attention that this is pulled from the internet. Landscaping is not recognized by the Federal Highway Administration as a traffic noise abatement measure at all. So,
Mr., could you, if you have a question, could you pose that, why don't you pose that as a question to the witness,
Right, well-
whether or not he agrees with that statement?
okay, are you aware that the Federal Highway Administration does not consider landscaping an effective noise abatement measure at all?
Yeah, I agree with that statement. Plant material is not a good measure to stop sound. It will soften sound in certain instances, but it will not stop sound.
I just wanted to clear that up, and I came in a few minutes late. This is apparently a revised version of the parking lot yet again. Can you tell me how many spots this parking lot accommodates? Has there been a change in capacity?
That would have to be testified to by the civil engineer.
Okay,
At this
thank
point, they worked out the site plan.
Very well.
Parking change.
And Mr. Canigula just now mentioned that the last property along Alban Lane, neighboring Ms. Long, the house in which the priests live belongs to Villanova University. Is that the case? Does
Yes.
Villanova, in fact, own that property?
That's my understanding. Augustinian zone, excuse me.
The Augustinians own it, not Villanova. Who owns the monastery, if I can just continue on this?
Yeah, Mr. Leonardi, we need questions directed at this witness, and
All right.
I don't believe he probably can
Very well.
address that.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And if I can, and Bill, I know sound attenuation is going to be coming up, and the architect just mentioned to me that we'll cover that at the next meeting. So that way we can, all right, to avoid.
And I apologize if I mispronounced this. Jonathan Hockshire? Heckshire? Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Just a quick follow-up to Ms. Long's question about, I guess it would be Zone 3 or Slide 3 in front of the Alderman Triangle. If you were potentially going to look at the ability to do any kind of berm, as she mentioned, is there a way before anything is decided by the board, is there a way to see a landscape drawing of how that would potentially be put into play before something is decided?
Well, I guess that's more of a process question. I'll address that. Any aspect of this proposal, this entire development that's proposed, is going to have to come in front of the township for approval. So if they are proposing some work to the triangle that is going to be used as buffering for this project, it will have to be shown and have to be approved by the township.
Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Ms. Hessman?
Anna Marie Hessman, Barley Coin Lane. I have some questions about the buffering on both sides of Pike Field. The buffering between Pike Field and the parking garage, am I correct in understanding that's proposed to be 15 feet at this time?
15 foot in width,
15 feet wide?
yes.
As
That's
opposed
not
to...
that's not a property buffer, that's just a planting bed.
I know it's not a property buffer, but it is to prevent residences on the other side of the field from experiencing light pollution and other kinds of things. so it's very important. Would you say that according to best practices in landscape architecture, that is a sufficient buffer for a parking garage, 15 feet wide?
I think it's sufficient, yes, but
For best practices?
for this, what we're proposing against the garage is not a total screen of that building. It's actually meant to help block views and actually kind of create a nice facade there. I think we'd be better served to do any kind of evergreen buffer closer to the residences on that existing berm.
So are you aware that the other side of the field has possible regrading needed and access issues for Asplant having to do with electrical wires, with multiple power outages? There's some access issues on the other side of the field, so overplanting it may actually be a little impractical.
I'm not aware of any issues that you have there.
So if it were more practical to do the buffering on this side of the field for the reasons I just stated, would you say that that's adequate buffering?
If you want to completely block the view of that building, no. If you want to enhance the view of that building, yes.
And if you wanted to further enhance the look of that building, have you considered planting any buffering on higher levels of the garage?
Actually, structural, on structure?
At various levels, more green, more planting, especially screening headlights from going out towards neighboring, adjacent neighborhoods.
Well, I believe the parapet walls of the garage would be high enough to, inside the garage, the architects will have to testify about that, but I believe the parapet walls of the structure are high enough to block light.
Okay. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
I believe we've had a few people state that they're representing the Friends to Preserve Radnor. If I can have one of those folks come up and ask questions. I have Ms. Bailey, Ms. Morgan, Ms. Pilling. I don't think Ms. Ross, I don't see her. Would one of you like to come up and ask questions on behalf of Radnor, the Friends to Preserve Radnor?
Good evening. Tony Bailey, Toni Bailey, at 132 Barclayton Road. I know you mentioned walled or screened buffers. In your experience, what would work better, the walled or screened buffer?
For visual screen?
Both visual and how it would work in terms of benefiting the neighbors.
It depends on what if you're screening the parking lot or the building.
Particularly on barley cone, walled or screened to prevent they're seeing so much of the building itself, and so how would that work?
On barley cone, so this neighborhood? Okay. Well, plant material is always, I think, more effective as far as visually how it's going to look. I think it's more aesthetically pleasing to look at a wall of plant material than a solid wall that almost looks like a highway barrier or sound barrier. So visually, I think plant material, the right species planted in the right configuration is a much more attractive way to buffer.
How effective would that be? I mean, aesthetically, it would look better than a wall, but how effective would that be in comparison to a wall?
You're saying to totally screen a view?
Yes.
It could be solid green if it's done right.
Now, I don't know if this is appropriate, but it was mentioned, according to the township, there were certain approvals in terms of the trees does the CICD fall under those same regulations as to how high, type of tree, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, is this, I know we have township regulations, but does the CICD specifically have limitations, or can they go beyond that?
That would be a
Probably a
question
legal
for...
question.
Yeah.
I think everyone here would say that the CICD has to comply with the Shade Tree Commission and any requirements that they have.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, if there was some special regulation, should we know about it?
I'm not aware of any, and
And do you have any, because you've spoken about tree removal, and I understand that in certain cases that has to happen, because of construction. Do you have any idea at this time what the percentage of how many trees would be removed, and how do you plan to mitigate that in terms of what kind of trees you'll be replacing those trees with?
I don't have a count at this point, but I do know that there is a replacement requirement for trees over a certain size, and so all of that, in addition to the buffering, there's plant material that would have to be planted for any tree that's taken down. So, and all the trees planted would be at the size per the ordinance or above, and come out of the recommended species list, and some of the species that I mentioned that would be compatible with this type of landscape, native to this landscape.
And they would have a viable, term of life, so they wouldn't be coming down, and, you'd have to plant new ones, pretty sturdy type trees?
Yeah, we have, and the township has a great list that looks like it's been vetted very well from what I can see. So it's, we've kind of gone through and eliminated species that have pest problems or are weak wooded. So yeah, these would be, what we would propose would be long-lived trees that mature and do exactly what we're intending them to do, which would be to, in this case, to buffer or to supplement a view or provide visual interest throughout the season, whether it be fall color or fruit or flower.
So am I to understand that when you do these plantings, it'll be the very best that you can put in their place, the ones that have to come out?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I believe that's all the parties who were accepted at the prior hearing. We had two parties accepted this hearing. Do either of you wish to ask questions at this point in time? Thank you. Would the board like to ask questions at this time? Anyone care to start?
Okay. Don, you want me to go first? Okay. Just a few clarifications I would like to get. Mr. Chico, would you agree that landscape design is used in part to screen view of structures? Is that one of the reasons why we do landscape design?
Can you repeat? I'm sorry, can you?
Would you agree that landscape design is used in part to screen view of structures? Is that one of the reasons why we do landscape design?
Yes.
Okay. Would you also agree that landscape design can also be used to affect the perceived height of buildings and structures?
Scale, provide
Okay.
scale.
Thank
yes.
you. When planting deciduous trees, like trees that would be like what I would consider become heritage trees, large trees, is it recommended to plant these trees on level ground?
Not necessarily. I mean, you're saying as opposed to a steep slope?
Well, steep slope or a man-made slope, or something like a berm.
As long as it's not excessively steep, it's not a problem.
Okay. So would a deciduous tree planted on a berm have the same growth and survival rate as a tree that's planted on level ground with good drainage and whatnot?
If the proper species is selected that can tolerate, maybe a drier condition, if it's happens to be a situation where it's not getting a lot of water's running off, if it's the proper species, it could thrive the same way it would if it's in a wet condition and a
Okay.
proper species.
In Exhibit 14B, the landscape plan, I'll let you turn to that page. This is the landscape plan showing the parking garage and Pike Field. The planting buffer that is shown is directly adjacent to the parking lot, but it appears to end just about at the point of the Performing Arts Center. Is that correct?
Yes, it transitions from a deciduous upright tree planting bed to an evergreen tree buffer to screen the loading dock, and then it ends where the actual Performing Arts Center, the architecture begins.
So is there a reason why there is no, at this point, no landscape buffer depicted across and adjacent to the Performing Arts Center?
I think it's just the design of that portion is not far enough along to show what we would propose there, just based on what the architecture looks like and how to complement the architecture and
Would you envision that would in fact get some form of screening then?
I don't know if I'd call it a screen, but definitely plant material to enhance the views of that building.
So for the residents of Barleycone Lane, which are on the east side of Pike Field, would they be relying on the buffer along their backyards to screen their view of the Performing Arts Center?
That would be the primary buffer, and it can be supplemented
Okay.
with new plant material. I think that's more effective place to screen this when you're up close to where the views want to be blocked than screening it far away. And
Okay, but we also agree that, in this case, landscape design could be used to affect the perception of scale of that structure?
yes, it can. Yep.
Okay, especially when it's done adjacent to the structure. You also stated that the buffering, at least along the Aldwin Lane section, would take about 5 years to grow in enough to provide an adequate buffer, to buffer the view from the homes on Aldwin Lane?
Of the view of the building?
No, the view of the parking lots.
I think the parking lot will almost be immediate. If they go in at 8 feet, and it's a solid wall of plant material.
How long do you think it would be until the buffer along the rear yards of Barleycone Lane would be adequate enough to screen the view of both the parking garage and the Performing Arts Center?
If planting was done to supplement the berm,
Yeah.
depending on the size they go in, it could almost be immediate if they go in large enough.
So second floor window of a home.
That's on ground level. I almost, depending on the size,
level.
almost immediately. Second floor, depending on what's planted and how fast it grows and the conditions, it could be 5 years, 10 years.
Okay, it could be quite a bit
depending on
longer.
depending on what's planted and how big it goes in the ground upon installation.
Do you think there would be some benefit to having not only the screening buffer at the rear of the properties on Barleycone Lane, but also, just like you have depicted in 14B, trees planted, plantings directly adjacent to the structure?
So you're saying that basically this plan plus a supplemental?
Yeah, having
Yeah,
both.
I think supplementing, and you can go case-by-case basis and look at each residence and what their views are and what the existing conditions are and where it needs to be filled and what plants will best do the job. So, it wouldn't be a Walmart line of trees that I would propose, but I would go case-by-case and, talk to each person and find out what would be the most effective strategy to screen the building, if that's what they wanted.
All right, thank you. No further questions.
First question's about the parking lot in sections 1 and 2 in particular. and also a little bit in 4. There will additionally, there'll be trees in the parking islands, correct?
Yes.
And so there's further buffering. That buffering, is that buffering shown on this plan? I don't see it.
It shows up on the L drawings that were submitted originally with the
Okay.
package.
So the plans we looked at tonight don't show the buffering that will be in the islands,
No.
but the lots themselves have buffering also.
The parking lot will be
Yeah.
fully planted as per the
And
ordinance.
then, so the next question's about the, what we're calling the screen along the parking garage. Is some of the function of that to screen and some of the function to filter? So can you explain the difference between a filter and a screen?
I guess if we go back to that exhibit, John? You're referencing the planting bed along the face of the garage?
Yes. It's not, I don't look at that and see, the intent isn't to block the building,
Exactly.
correct? The intent is to...
filter.
Is the question, is the intent to filter it or block it?
It's not intended to block that building
Yes.
100%. It's meant to filter the view, lessen the impact, and also provide,
Right.
some shade. But there's openings in that garage for a reason, to get air and light
Okay.
and, for safety purposes and views out. So to create a wall of evergreen there, we just didn't think was a good idea.
And how tall, it says medium deciduous, so how tall do you expect that to be when you're mature?
The shrub layer or the trees?
The tree layer.
Trees are proposed to be upright deciduous trees, like an upright maple or a sugar maple or something, so that could get up to 40.
So spanning most of the
40,
height
50
of the
feet.
building?
Exactly.
If not the whole height?
Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Yep.
I follow up on that for one moment. What is the facade of the parking garage to be? You mentioned you want to maintain the view of the facade. What's the material of the facade? Do you know?
I don't, the architects will be testifying on
Okay,
that.
thank you.
I have a few questions as well. Mr. Chico, are you familiar with the drawings that were submitted in the original packet that we received in July, specifically drawing L3.02?
Yes, our office produced those, yeah.
I was going to say, was that out of your office,
That
those
was our
those
office,
plans?
Yeah.
I would like to, I have a copy of that plan. I don't see it in your presentation. I was going to bring it to the table. If that's, I have some questions that relate to the landscaping that's shown on that plan vis-à-vis this additional submittal from this evening. Is that the plan?
That's 3.02.
That's 3.02?
Yes.
All right, could you zoom in to the area that is by the bridge across from the Long residence and also the residence owned by the Augustinians?
More?
Yep.
Or-
A little bit more. Okay. Can you push it up a little bit? The other way. All right. I think I still need to come down and use the pointer. So, specifically, right in, wait, I got to get back to the stylus. There you go, thank you. Right by this match line right here. You can see, we're talking about, this is the bridge structure and ramp. This is the ramp right here. This is the bridge over the rail lines, and here's the buffering on either side. And this is the residence I'm referring to. If you look right in this area, there really is no buffering that's provided. There is one tree that's in the island there. However, you also see that there's parking spaces that continue to point in the direction of the residences here. So it looks to me as if there is no buffering provided, at least for that parking spot, and nothing in general in this area. Would you agree that that's what these drawings indicate?
Testifying earlier, I said that we would fill that we will bring that buffer all as close as we can to the bridge structure without impacting the structure in a negative way. So yeah, we would continue that. There is a gap there that would.
So right in here, this area right in here, what is that earth?
It's a property line.
The ramp ends right there, so there's obviously room right here.
Yeah, that area, that buffer can be extended to the east, like where your cursor is, yes. That could be supplemented.
And also on your other plans, if you look at your section 2, you want to bring up section 2? You can see in this section the relatively low height of the berm, and this is similar to the area that I'm referring to right there. So in that, you would see that car lights pointing that way could go to and be seen on the other side.
Yeah, in that area, the existing trees, to save those trees, we are minimizing disturbance to those root systems. So in that area, we would be proposing large evergreen shrubs be planted in that area to block those views, as opposed to in the other situation where we're using the berming to block headlights. So it changes depending on the condition we're facing with the existing plant material.
Right, but again, in the drawings that we have right now, there's no deciduous or evergreen trees shown in the specific area I addressed, and there is no, the height of the berm would be substantially similar to that level based on its proximity to your section line.
Correct.
No further questions.
Any other questions from the board? I just have a few quick questions for clarification. You talked about at the beginning of your testimony how currently the plans have changed, and I believe you testified that the orientation of the parking lots have shifted 90 degrees, and the parking lot is now cut into the slope to create the berm. Is there any other change that has occurred between what was presented at the last hearing and what is being presented tonight?
The orientation of the parking, the islands in between those bays of parking is different. You know, the islands are wider and greener, so as we mentioned earlier, there will be trees in the parking lot. There will also be vegetation in those islands that run north-south, so that's different. Before, it was one big, long, linear parking lot that ran east to west. So that's a change that is precipitated by the changing to a 90-degree. Other. What?
I thought, I'm just wondering, I think it was changed, we're trying to figure out when that change of that parking lot occurred.
Yeah, it was just the testimony presented tonight, it made it sound like something has changed between what you presented last time and this
No,
time.
I think we presented that change last time.
It was between the original submission.
Right, between the original.
Okay, so there
I
is,
think the cutting in of the parking lots to create the berm was the change that
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed.
That could be correct.
Yeah, I wasn't at the last hearing, so
okay.
I
Well,
thought this was on new.
Neither was I, so that's my confusion. And as far, and I believe you also testified, looking at Exhibit A14.A, that is just kind of a sample buffer, but that type of buffering will extend along the entire west parking lot, West Lancaster parking lot. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's unique, as I mentioned. As you go, we have to really look closely at it and see what the conditions are, and that's why it's, you know, it changes depending on what vegetation is there and the exposure and things like that. So yes, it will be extended the entire way.
Okay. And it will be extended in front of the parking lot behind the proposed dorms?
Yes, yes. And in some cases, there's existing trees that will be saved as well, so.
But that parking lot is not cut into the slope, so there's no berming there.
It's pretty level there, but at that point, you're into where the R100 line actually is raised up and creates a berm. And also, the Aldwin Triangle is kind of a buffer there as well.
And as far as, I believe there was a question regarding irrigation. The question I had was, have you looked at irrigation both while the plants are being established and after establishment, or are you just looking at irrigation to help at the establishment of the plants and not a permanent system?
Typically, in plantings like this, it's not a permanent irrigation system. The installer will be required to maintain and irrigate the plants for a certain number of or length of time until they are accepted and thriving, and then there'll be a guarantee period. In some cases, there could be spigots or something that are nearby that the facilities people could, in a case of a drought, irrigate the plants if necessary. But the plants in this buffer would be designed that they could tolerate conditions once they're established. They would not need irrigation.
Thank you. That's all the questions I've had. Mr. Caniglia,
Just a
any?
couple, yeah.
Okay.
Real quick. Dan, does screening and buffering act as a light buffer?
It does, yes.
So we talked about buffering from light. Will this buffering that's being proposed here be an effective buffer from light?
Yes, yes.
Also, there was talk about, let me ask you this. Is a 20-foot buffer adequate to form a screen that can't be seen through?
Yes, definitely.
Is less than a 20-foot buffer adequate to form a screen not to be seen through?
I've seen screen, and I've done plans for ordinances that have 10-foot buffers. So this is about double the size of a lot of townships that we work in.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Ms. Bowe?
No questions.
Okay. I think, unless the board have any follow-up questions? That being said, Mr. Caniglia, we can move on to your next witness.
Yes. Kevin?
Why don't we take, I didn't know, wasn't know if we were doing this. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? We'll be back at 8:15.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it on my phone right now.
Okay, if we can get started again. Mr. Caniglio, if you can call your next witness.
Kevin Smith?
I do. Kevin Smith.
And Kevin, I'm showing you what's been marked as A7. Is that your curriculum vitae?
It is. Yeah.
Okay, and what is your profession?
I am an architect.
And how long have you been an architect?
Officially an architect, 27 years.
Right. And by whom are you currently employed?
Robert A. M. Stern Architects. I'm a partner.
And how long have you been there?
15 years.
And do you have an area of emphasis as far as architecture is concerned, the type of things that you do?
My primary focus is on higher education, campus planning, and buildings for universities.
Okay, and just quickly, what universities have you represented in the past?
Worked at the Pennsylvania State University, mentioned before, recently completed buildings at Drexel, College of William and Mary, Harvard University, 3 projects at Harvard actually, Ithaca College, Webster University in St. Louis, University of Georgia, Georgia State, several others that are missing. But
is there a LEED certification that architects get?
Many architects are accredited LEED professionals.
Are you one?
I am not, but
Okay.
I have done many LEED buildings, including a recent LEED, several LEED Platinum buildings, and one that is now net zero.
Now, turning your attention to this particular project, have you prepared architectural conceptual renderings of the proposed development?
Yes, we have.
And if we can go to what's been marked as Exhibit B of A1C, I believe that shows some perspectives, and if you can go through the perspectives that we're showing, in particular, certain architectural features, facades, things of that nature.
Yeah, for the benefit of the board and everyone, these are a series of renderings that have been prepared, which show the character of the buildings that are proposed. They're proposed to be clad in schist stone, which is the kind of primary material of the Villanova campus, with pitched roofs, series of casement windows with stone trim, and a expression we call really 3.5 stories. So we have 3 full floors, and then the last floor is partially in the roof with a series of dormers and gables. And there's kind of little towers at the turning points that is characteristic of collegiate Gothic architecture. This is another view. That first one, if you go back, which is on the from the north side of Lancaster, looking south, showing both of the groupings of buildings. There's 6 buildings in total, in 3 in each, in 2 groupings. That shows both of them. John is showing us the plan, which we're familiar with. It has courtyards that face both north toward Lancaster and south toward the R100 tracks. The next view is, you're right, on Lancaster Avenue, looking west, with the edge of the Performing Arts Center is to your left there, and then the first of the easternmost grouping of buildings, that's actually the intersection of Ithan. So you'll see Ithan going off to the left, and again, very consistent palette of materials and architectural expression. Next. One thing that is in the site plan, it's perhaps not as clear in the site plan as is in views like this, that there's a pedestrian spine that runs internal to all the buildings, so it goes from courtyard to courtyard to courtyard, and ends at the west end, where there's a little plaza that leads to the pedestrian bridge going over Lancaster. That's really the spine. That's kind of Main Street, which is between both Lancaster and the parking lot that's along the R100 tracks. And all the entrances of the buildings are off of those archways. So really that focuses the pedestrian experience. This is a view looking east when you're just entering the precinct, showing the pedestrian bridge going across. There's a archway on the south side which is for pedestrians, and then a main span that goes across the street that's again clad in the same schist stone. And then when you get up to the left, closer to the church, there's a walkway that's just raised above in those flowering trees that are there now, and ends in a plaza at the church. And you can see then the buildings beyond. And this is a plan of that area, starting at the at the left side. There's a plaza. John will point out directly out, expanded plaza outside the church steps. Kind of ceremonial occasions, a walkway that's going through the existing trees. You're raised about 4 feet above the existing grade, and then to go up, and that center span is above the roadway and has fairly high stone cheek walls. When you get to right about where the cursor is, just a little farther, there's a stairway that leads you down to the plaza at the bottom there, which is as I pointed out before, the end of that internal pedestrian spine that goes to the tunnel right there. And if you continue on the bridge, it leads you to a landing spot that's in line with the current bridge across the SEPTA tracks. There's a ramp that allows you to have persons with disabilities get up there, and both to be able to get up from the parking lot also for those who wish to go to the church.
And perhaps again, and I don't know if this is A9, John Kluver, or?
Yes.
That is A9?
That
Okay.
A9.
So what you were just referring to was A9?
A9, that's correct.
And had the steps been?
This is another view. From the entrance to the overall development. This is entering the campus from the east side with the Performing Arts Center. That's the facade of the Performing Arts Center that has offices and classrooms on the second and third floor, and that looks across the playing fields, and with some idea of the line of trees that, in response to the previous question, that we would imagine continuing along the roadway that is on that side. And in the very far distance, you see the spires of the church. And this is looking back at the Performing Arts Center and the entrance tower or the pedestrian entrance tower of the garage, which is on the right side of the picture, and then the lobby of the Performing Arts Center in the curved glass element that faces, again, across. You're looking across Lancaster, looking southeast. This is a rendering of the garage. So the entrance for the pedestrians is in that stone tower. It's in the same general aesthetic as the rest of the development. There's elevators, and then there's a planted area along the street where there's a line of trees that are proposed.
Just keep on going?
Just keep going.
Yeah.
And then things that viewed from a million miles away, those are elevations of the facades of the development seen both from the Lancaster side and from the parking lot side. And then these are details of each of the buildings seen closer in, rendered for materials and shadows. This is the facade of the eastern group seen from Ithan Avenue, and then a section through one of the typical courtyards, and again showing that arch. And this is the elevation of the parking garage along Ithan, and elevations of the Performing Arts Center. Again, the same palette of stone, cut stone, and pitched roofs.
Okay.
And that's it.
Let's refer to A6A, I believe. Is there any fencing proposed for the north side of Lancaster Avenue to prevent pedestrians from crossing the street and going up to campus in areas beside the pedestrian bridge?
Yes, there is, and there is a fence proposed on the south side of Lancaster, which is similar to the fence that now exists for most of the length on the north side, approximately 4 to 6 foot high steel picket fence, which now exists on the north side, is proposed on the south, and it actually ties to that edge of the pedestrian bridge to prevent crossing where, actually that's exactly where it ties to the abutment of the bridge.
And then on the north side?
On the north side, it is proposed to extend the existing fence, which now ends to either side of that driveway that provides access for special events at the church. Continue that on to the west behind the current hedge, again to prevent, so there won't be a possibility of pedestrian crossing into the campus onto the west side. And that will continue on until it really gets to the end of the campus. It is proposed to improve the gates that now are at the driveway that goes to the church, with a pair of gates that are of the similar material as the fence, so that they will become an impediment to pedestrians to go up that walkway.
Have the steps of the pedestrian bridge been adjusted to place foot traffic outside the driveway limits?
Yes, actually, one thing that's important to note is, which is a change from the original submission, is that we're showing the entire driveway that leads to the SEPTA station and to the visitor parking area that's just to the west of that. Originally, the driveway was on both sides of the bridge. Now it is exclusively to the west. So the steps now, it doesn't require crossing any line of traffic to go from that pedestrian spine. You come right to the plaza that's at the end there and go up the steps.
Can you tell us how the students will access the pedestrian bridge?
The students will access that by really getting out of their buildings. If that's a good view. Thank you, John. As I said before,
I'm referring to which exhibit?
6A.
6A.
From on that plan, and John will point out the entrances to each of the 6 buildings, which all are adjacent to that pedestrian spine, which you see going east to west in a slight arc. And they would come out of their buildings, go along there, and go all the way to the west and across that plaza and up the steps.
So there won't be any direct access from the dormitories? Like a bridge?
There is
from the
not,
dormitories to the bridge?
there wouldn't be direct access from within one of the buildings because there's 6. It would be hard, it wouldn't make sense to choose one over all 6 of them.
Are you providing a ramp to permit handicap access to the bridge?
Yes, there's a ramp at the south end, which, as I noted before, is right from the where there is disabled parking and is accessible via an accessible route from the rest of the development.
Are you intending for the buildings to be LEED certified?
Yes, our target minimum target is LEED Silver, and we hope to do better, and we're on that path.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Before we get to Mr. Bowles' questions, the renderings, the perspectives, and then the elevations that you went through, are they part of a specific exhibit?
Yes, they are. They are part of A1C, and they are marked as Exhibit C in A1C. which
And-
is the developmental impact statement.
And Mr. Smith went through those renderings in order.
That is
So-
correct.
Yes.
Okay, so if someone's reading the transcript, they'll understand as he went to each one.
Except A9.
Yeah, except we referred to A9.
Right, but I think you actually
Right.
mentioned that when you referred to A9.
Correct.
Okay.
And actually,
Just-
excuse me, the perspectives start in the developmental impact statement. They're listed, they start at Exhibit B, and it says perspectives, and that's where they start, and they go through Exhibit C, which are the building elevations, is where they end.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Bola?
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Mr. Smith, how are you?
Well, thank you.
It's an admirable design, very nice. I just have a couple of questions. You mentioned the new fence on the south side of Lancaster Avenue ending at the Performing Arts Center. Is it extending across, no, ending at the end of the dorms. Does it extend across? Will that, I want you to go to the left, John, if you would, to your left, to the parking lot that's not in the CIDC district, right over there. Does the fence extend along on Lancaster Avenue between that parking lot and the campus?
No, it doesn't.
So where would people parking in that parking lot, how would they accomplish going to campus?
They would go across the driveway and up the stairs and onto the bridge, or conversely down to the ramp and up. Or
Okay.
there's also another set of stairs at the south end of the bridge.
Could you show that entire parking lot, John, to the left there? Is that it? Is that as far as it goes?
Right. So if you look at that, there's a, go out farther.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
So there's a driveway which provides a reasonable walking surface to go all the way to the bridge.
All right, so is anyone who parks in that parking lot anticipated to use the pedestrian bridge?
Yes.
Are there other more convenient and easier accesses to the campus right across Lancaster Avenue?
Where there is a fence that makes it not very convenient.
The fence on the north side?
On the north side.
Okay, so that's extending the whole way on the north?
That's correct.
And that will frustrate those attempts? Other than what's that roadway there at the end where there's a...
If you,
Down here?
Yeah,
Off the plan?
no, right there, where you are. No, to your left.
Oh, here.
Yeah. What's that? I can't read it.
It's a new access.
it's just
Okay.
a new access.
And there's no crosswalks
There's not a
available there?
crosswalk there.
Okay, great.
Right. And there's fencing across the street. You'd have to go all the way to 322 at the.
Great. That's what I wanted to know. Now, the other area, while we're on the subject of pedestrian access, if you could go to the far right of this plan, John. No, even further. I want the whole parking lot in there if you can. What's the exhibit that?
Right?
Yes, that shows the. Yeah, there we go. I mean, you have to anticipate, do you not, Mr. Smith, that the students in the dorms on the right of this exhibit, A6A, will access the campus from the Ithan Avenue street level access. Am I correct?
Not necessarily. I think that, it depends on if you're going to where the bulk of the academic classrooms are in the campus, which is west of the west end from the church and west, I think the bridge is going to be the better path.
Okay. But for athletic events or something like that, the Ithan Avenue is likely to be used.
Provide, as it is for some of the students in the South Campus,
Right.
for whom the bridge will provide an additional attraction to go across the tracks as they do.
Okay. Because that intersection is going to be the subject of some discussion, I think, during the traffic impact study, and the pedestrian crossing there is critical also, which is why I asked it now. The other area I just want to explore is the facades of the parking garage. There was one of the exhibits you brought up that showed an elevation for the parking garage. I don't recall what it was. All right, so we have the cyst stone on the columns, I assume, correct? On the
Yes. This, On the, as is shown on the towers.
On the towers.
The towers. And
Okay. What's the facade other than that along that entire length?
it is that's shown as a precast concrete screen, so with deep fins to minimize the views within the, into the garage and the escape of light from the garage.
And do you know, Mr. Smith, which direction this faces? Is this the one towards the playing field?
This is the elevation toward Ithan.
Toward Ithan.
The playing field elevation is similar.
Playing field elevation is the same.
Yes, is similar.
And that's the one that that your previous witness testified there'd be some screening, filtering plants and plant materials installed along that.
There's a denser screening on that side than there is on this side, but there's also there's a wall along this the street and trees in the buffer between the there.
Okay.
It should be noted just that there's a parapet wall at 2'9" above the surface of each of the levels of the garage to prevent, it's just high enough to prevent headlights from being seen.
Are the structures proposed, do they resemble the materials and the architecture of the chapel or the materials used for the West Campus buildings? Do you know, sir?
Our model really for the feeling of the stone is Austin Hall, which is closer to the chapel in feeling. It's directly across the street. It's by a noted architect, Wilson Eyre. So it's a little warmer and with a less contrast with the kind of white stone that there is in the West Campus. So it's meant to really reflect the character of the buildings directly across the street.
All right. And just going back for a minute to the access to the pedestrian bridge, is there ADA students who are disabled? Is there access to that bridge down by the train station?
It is, yeah.
So they would have to, if wheelchair bound, they'd have to go along the pathway just indicated by John.
Yeah, or they'd cut the corner, the diagonal in that first courtyard to the right there.
Was there any thought given to an elevator at the corner to accommodate them at the corner closest on Lancaster Avenue?
We've considered a variety of things. An elevator is certainly a possibility, but it seemed that the bulk of the people who would need or want the access would come from the parking lot.
That's the one I asked about, the filtering plants.
Actually, that should be the Performing Arts Center.
Okay. Does the fence on the north side?
Bill, you need to.
Sorry. Does the fence on the north side of Lancaster Avenue extend all the way across the west end of the West Lancaster parking lot?
Yes.
All right. It seems to end before it reaches that. Right there.
No, the intention is that it continues.
Okay.
It continues on.
All right. And could you bring up the elevation of the east side of the garage?
On the east.
The one on Ithan Avenue, the one that was, yeah, is that the one you're referring to?
No, it'd be an earlier one. The perspective?
The perspective.
That one? That's it.
All right. There are plantings depicted there. Are those trees going in? Or are they just for show?
No, we would want plants. Those are meant to be, rather than buffers, they're kind of shown as street trees. So that's along the driveway there. We would want something to give scale to the building.
All right. Was the original proposal, if you know Mr. Smith, to match the stone of the chapel on these new buildings?
The stone that the chapel is a little colder color than the stone of some of the other buildings across that form more the fabric of the university, such as Austin Hall, and those are the ones that we would most like to emulate.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Now, you don't have to ask questions, but if you do have questions, if the other parties could please come up to the front, give their name, and speak into the microphone.
John, can you just put up the slide of the bridge? That would be great. I just have one question, and that's regarding the bridge and the building materials that you intend to use. Can you do an aerial shot? That would be great, if we could see that.
The plan view, you mean?
Yeah, that would be terrific. No.
I'm not sure which one you're referring
The bridge over that includes the SEPTA bridge?
to.
There we are. I see it. Okay. So my question is this. In looking at all of your initial renderings, we all assumed that the bridge was going to be matching the stone, the facade was going to be matching the stone of the buildings, correct? And in a meeting that we had on Friday, I gather that the stone is going to cut off at some point, and then you're going to be using a different material, and then the third material will not be your ownership, it will be actually the SEPTA bridge that is existing. So my question is, can we actually see where that cutoff is intended so we can get a visual idea of the true matching facade? So, yeah, you know which one I mean, John, because we saw it on Friday.
I don't know that it's.
I saw it when I was sitting back there, actually. I just would like to get a clear view of this sort of three-pieced look to the bridge and what you think of that aesthetically in terms of a visual. Do you know what I'm referring to?
I know the
And so
design. I'm
it-
trying to think of the.
But do you see what I'm saying? Like, how far back, how many feet back will that beautiful facade stop, and then we'll go to maybe something less attractive, perhaps? I don't know.
Well, yeah, actually,
No, you had it up here, though. Trust me. No, it's the one. It's one from the view from the neighbors forward. That's the view I'm looking for.
I don't think it's in the package.
Well, anyway, maybe we can just use this.
Yeah, I feel I can explain
You
the
can?
thought here.
Okay.
And so, again, I'll just do it again left to right. So there's that plaza.
Right.
Then there's a section, that first section is really just right on the ground with a very small stone
Right.
edge. And then there's a center span where the stone comes all the way down to the ground and is kind of solid. There's a solid abutment in that section, and then again on the other side, which and John will show you the arch. When you see it in perspective, it ends just to the right of the stair.
That's where it will end. In that,
That's where it, and then it becomes a series. It's the same stone, but it's a series of stone piers, so that it doesn't become a Chinese wall between the housing and the parking. So it's solid stone piers, but they're broken.
But they're broken by sort of a concrete element, for lack of a better description?
No,
or-
there's planting underneath them. So then it becomes open planting, and the walkway above has a decorative ironwork grill on it, on the sides.
Okay.
And then it ends, and then the stonework comes in again right next to the SEPTA station. So there's a little stone architects call it a decula, but
So
there's
how
a
many
little.
feet do you estimate that is, that will be sort of a a different look to the bridge from?
It's 120 feet. Each of those is a 30-foot span. It's actually, I think it's actually quite attractive. It's more attractive than it would be if it were stone.
If it were solid?
It would be sort of unpleasant and not very permeable. And this allows us to have planting visible
Right.
underneath it, and that can eventually grow up to be as high as the bridge.
And then how will that connect to the SEPTA bridge, which I'm sure you've walked it, but it almost is like a cage around it. I mean, how do you visually see that being aesthetically pleasing when you're coming from the South Campus onto this gorgeous bridge, and first you sort of go through this cage-like creature, for lack of a better description?
Well,
you know what I'm saying? How can you help that in any way?
Well, that is up to SEPTA to improve. We'd love to work with SEPTA to make it better, but it's true that when you get off of it, there's a nice widened spot, which is it's a nice square area with the stone all the way around it, which is which helps us have a place for like snow removal to turn around. So there's a good practical reason.
Sort of a gathering.
So it kind of gives you a little relief from that. And one day the other side of that bridge will get improved, and
Hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other parties wish to ask this witness questions? Once again, if you just give your name so the record reflects who's asking the question.
Rick Leonardi from Aldwin Lane. I just have one question. Mr. Smith, good evening. From the CICD, the language itself, I read Section A, the first paragraph. The various purpose and intent of the regulations, the further intent of the comprehensive integrated college development to promote a pedestrian-friendly landscape. Sorry, okay, it's the further intent of the CICD to promote a pedestrian-friendly landscape upon existing college. Goes on a little bit later, says these regulations are intended through enhanced vibrancy of the campus areas and again, a pedestrian-friendly townscape. So pedestrian-friendly as a term appears twice in Section A of the CICD intent regulation. You've just used the word, in describing the iron fence, you used the word prevent, I think 3 times, preventing pedestrians doing something. You've used the word impediment once. Mr. Bulla has used the word in reference to the fence. He's used the word frustrate. In what way is this pedestrian friendly, or pedestrian friendlier than what exists now?
I would just submit that Lancaster Avenue is the thing that is least pedestrian friendly, and our goal is to create a nice environment on either side of it and link it with the bridge. And I think everything that we've done has created a very pleasant environment within the precinct, and find a very good way of linking it with a pedestrian-friendly environment that the university has worked very hard to improve on the north side of Lancaster.
So existentially, at the end of the day, the only thing to do with Lancaster is to have as little to do with it as possible.
I think there's a place for pedestrians and cars to coexist, and sometimes, as the saying goes, good fences make good neighbors. It just kids wandering off into the street are not good neighbors to cars, and vice versa.
Very well. Thank you.
Anna Marie Hessman, Barleyco Lane. We see a drawing of the parking garage from the Ithan Avenue side. There's not really a drawing in there of what it would look like from the field side, and I think you were starting to describe it, but is there a reason there's no drawing of that side included?
No, but we'd be more than happy to show it to you.
I'm sorry?
We'd be more than happy to show it to you.
Okay. Have you personally walked on Lancaster Avenue, both sides from the neighboring communities back and forth?
Yes.
End to end?
Yep.
Would you describe a little bit how the experience for community members walking on one side or the other who are walking through campus will change? At this intersection at the church where you're preventing and impeding and frustrating?
I'm going to object to that characterization. That's not what the testimony is.
Sorry, those words were there.
That
I'm just,
is not what the testimony is.
Objections noted, the witness may answer the question.
I think it'd be a very similar experience that you're walking along. As it is, the experience on the north side of Lancaster will be very similar to what it is now, which is you're walking along a sidewalk directly adjacent to the road. There's a fence on your right-hand side if you're going west, and then there is existing a hedge, which is basically the same as a fence, but happens to have a few ways that people have made their way through toward the west side of the campus. So I don't think that experience is going to be any different in kind than it is now. On the south side, on the other hand, instead of walking along between a fence and a parking lot and directly on the road, there's a very nice wide, I think we probably didn't mention enough, but there's a 20-foot wide promenade, really, with planting between you and the traffic, and what I might modestly call attractive buildings on the other side, and which ends in a widened green space just when you get to the corner of Lytton. So, on balance, I think that experience is certainly nicer than the parking lot. And then when you get the Performing Arts Center is kind of a civic building, if you will, at the east end, and we've taken great pains to make it attractive on all sides.
And will there be a level crossing adjacent to the bridge? Right now, I can't tell, there are no crosswalks on this drawing. So if they're continuing past the bridge, can they cross right there?
That you can definitely cross on the south side. Whether you can cross across the street to the sidewalk is more up to PennDOT than us.
And what?
But if you did, you would basically have the same experience that you do now. You cross, you get onto a sidewalk, and you can continue on.
If those people are trying to get to the chapel?
If they're trying to get to the chapel, they will go up the stairs and.
So they'll have to climb stairs now.
Go up the
where
stairs,
they previously had a nice level crossing.
Well, there's stairs when you go across Lancaster now. You go across, and there's a series of steps that are it's not a continuous slope. There are steps on both sides. There are a few steps, and then you go up.
Yeah, there are definitely a few right at the church, but the level crossing, they'll have to cross a lot higher, would you say?
Have to cross
get to the bridge.
Yeah.
And what about the handicapped person arriving by bus? Where's the bus stop on this? I can't really tell.
It's right there.
Right there. What about from the other side, people coming by bus on the south side of Lancaster? If someone arrives by bus, where do they get off?
Well, right now they get off here, would probably be pushed back.
Yep.
And how do those people, especially, maybe the slower moving older people, how do they get to the church from there?
They go down and they go up the ramp.
They have to walk all the way back to the train platform, or not climb, they don't have to climb, they take an elevator, but instead of
it's a ramp.
A level crossing and a few stairs.
Right.
Nope, I think that's it, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Tony Bailey with an I, 132 Barclayton Road. What is presently at Church Walk right now in terms of crossing? What is at Church Walk? How do the students cross now?
There's a crosswalk.
Has there been problems with the crosswalk?
Not that I'm aware of.
With the parishioners Could you describe to me how they will be able to access the church, including handicapped parishioners?
Well, there will remain to be a drop-off. There is an opening for people who really need it. They allow now vehicles to go onto the campus side.
Could you explain that to me further? Because I'm not exactly sure where the drop-off begins and how far they will need to go to access the
Well,
church.
if you come to the church, let's go back to the plan. It just what? Right. Right now, it's the university allows people to be dropped off right at the church if they need to be, because you can't actually get in. As you know, you cannot get in the front steps. You have to come in, and there's a ramp on the side, on the east side of the church.
Is there parking for the parishioners other than what you're describing as the drop-off?
There is parking that is actually on the south side in that whole parking area, which is replacing the parking that currently exists, where most parishioners come on the south side. They go to the visitor parking and they go across the street. If you're in a wheelchair, it's very difficult to get up to the church from that as it currently is, because there's not an accessible route from the grade crossing at the church lane up to the church. There is not a way that meets ADA requirements for a wheelchair to get from that point to the church.
So are you saying now there will be ADA compliance
Yes.
for the parishioners in
Yes.
terms of
Right, you can park,
parking?
John, if you will point out that there are handicap spots right there. There's an accessible route to the bottom of the ramp. You go up the ramp. The ramp is ADA compliant all the way to the front door to the church.
So they'll have to go up the ramp. And
Yes.
where will they be parking?
Right on the parking lot where they can park now.
And that's the designated 65 parking spaces?
That's designated for people who want to do that. If they really need additional assistance, the university allows them to park on the other side.
It's the north side. There's a parking lot to the left that's not being shown.
And that will accommodate the necessary numbers of parishioners attending Mass, whatever Mass it is, whether it's an Easter Mass or a Christmas Mass or just regular 10:30 Mass.
The handicap spaces, for handicapped, yes.
And so they will access the bridge, which won't be covered, and they will be subjected to weather.
As they are now, coming from, the bulk of people park on the south side of, people coming to Mass. Forgive me, I've not been, but I know the bulk of people park in the visitor lot and go across the street and go up the path. None of it is covered.
In terms of...
It's effectively the same distance.
Let me add, without having to call someone from the university, everyone knows there's parking on the north side near the church in the parking lot as well, and the parishioners have access to that parking lot, in addition to where they park now on the south side of Lancaster Avenue.
Well, they do have access, but availability is limited. And so you may have access, but you may not have parking for all the parishioners that need to park up there.
Also, handicap can be let off in front of the church, as we discussed, around that circle in that area, and then there's access into the church from there as well.
Also, in terms of the community, when people get dropped off by the bus on the north side, then they will have to cross over to the south side and get to where they have to go, including Villanova employees, to go over the bridge.
That is what will have to happen, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no one else, I'd like to ask if the board has any questions of this witness?
Yeah, I do. The buildings themselves, can students go from one building to the next without going outdoors?
Not really. Right, there's a connection through a fire stair, but it's not, it's actually meant to discourage that, so that there's not people wandering through from dorm to dorm.
Okay.
That's intentional.
And you indicated that the east side of the parking garage is going to be similar to the Ithan Avenue side.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah.
Would it be difficult to alter that to look more like a building than a parking garage?
No, and if truth be told, the university has asked us to put a little bit more stone in it, just because they would rather it look a little bit more like that. So.
I mean, we don't need like the Charleston garages, but something much more pleasing to look at from that side. Thank you. That's all I have.
We hear you. So.
Any other commissioner questions?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of ask the same questions. I want to make sure that it's obvious what we're looking for. What I'm hearing in testimony from the residents is they're very concerned about their view shed. Mm-hmm. You've done a tremendous job on the view shed from the public on Lancaster Avenue. You know, the buildings look beautiful. It's subjective, but they look beautiful. I want to focus on the parking garage because that is, in my opinion, even though the distance appears to be in a couple, 400 feet, maybe more from the homes, it's really the only part of the development, the proposal that, let's say this, it's facing residential homes, mm-hmm. So I'm concerned. So what is the length of the parking structure on the Pike Field side, approximately?
260 feet, yeah.
260 feet. And what is, just to get some context here, what is the longest length of one of the housing structure sides that is not interrupted by architectural offsets?
I think ordinance is 180.
It's 180 feet. I think the longest, the longest is just about 180 feet.
Parking structures.
And there is an offset on that side, which is why it doesn't look like this. There's the same.
So it's 180 feet with an offset, with an architectural offset.
No, the whole thing is 200. It's less than the whole thing is 280 feet or something, and it's two 120-foot areas with a 40-foot inset.
Okay, so we have a parking structure. Does the parking structure have offsets on the Pike Field side?
It does, yes. So there's one offset in the center. I think that shows in the plan better.
I see it.
Pike. So, yeah.
It's like a cutout.
It's a cutout.
Yeah. So, if you're looking from the second floor window of your home on Barleycone Lane, you're just seeing a structure that's about 260 feet long. And I appreciate your comment to Commissioner Nagel, but quite frankly, it looks like a parking structure. I mean, it doesn't look anything like the housing units. So to just push a little further on this question, is it possible to include architectural elements on that Pike Field side of the parking structure such that that side of the structure looks more like housing than it does like a parking garage? Faux windows, the schist materials across the entire surface. Is that possible architecturally and from an engineering standpoint?
Absolutely. Whether one thinks it's good architecture or not is a question, but I think there's a place that we could get to that everyone would be happy with what it looks like. There are other things that govern parking garage design, then.
But from an engineering standpoint, maybe from a fire code standpoint, is there any
You need
reason why
openings. They can't be glazed, obviously, so. But
Okay.
it can have a more building-like expression.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I've heard parking garages described as utilitarian last thought type thing in construction, and
They shouldn't be, but.
it shouldn't be. Certainly, there would be higher cost associated with trying to make this look different than what we currently see in the drawings.
Yes, probably, but not.
Not
That's not the government.
incrementally more expensive.
It's not a governing
Okay.
feature.
So just to echo, in the renderings, there are no views of Pike from, I'll say from the northeast side of Pike Field at Lancaster. There are no renderings showing us what the Performing Arts Center
Together.
and parking structure would look like from the roadway.
No.
And are they available now? Were they
No, but
created?
I don't see why we wouldn't be happy to.
Okay,
to
maybe
produce something.
Maybe
that
for the next
gave you-
hearing, I don't know if
gave
it's
you a
appropriate
feeling
to
of
ask for that, but if we could have this for the next hearing, it would be helpful. Now I'm
But
gonna
wait, John, there's a elevation of the Performing Arts Center from Lancaster Avenue, or you mean from?
Well, it's at a 90-degree angle to, it's perpendicular to the face, yeah, so, yeah, what I'm looking for is one at a diagonal. So an orthogonal view showing me what it would look like from the northeast corner of Pike Field.
If I may, you'd ask,
I don't think
you'd
so.
like a perspective.
That's more at Ithan, unless,
Yes, but see
well, it's
the
not showing the
garage.
garage.
And add to that the garage. Is that
Yeah,
what you're asking for?
That's what I'm asking.
Sir? Yeah.
Yeah, the beautiful structure there is, but the garage is not there. So I'm going to switch gears. Thank you for your answers on that. So there, just one quick note. There appears to be some type of a footpath northwest of the footbridge. I'm sorry, the bridge. It was in one of the drawings.
Right here.
Yes. What is that? And it appears that there's a break in the fence there.
It won't get covered.
Is it?
There's a little path there.
There's currently a little path.
There's currently a little path there,
It's
but
like-
there's no need for it.
Yeah.
And the intention is to continue
Is to-
contiguous fencing.
I
That
mean,
would be,
I think it sort of leads to a slight break in the hedge now. The intention is to close that.
okay. I believe it leads to a parking lot. No?
No, the parking lot's farther west.
This is
It goes in that direction. I don't know if it goes to the parking lot.
We looked at it on Google Earth, and it appears that it comes up to that new parking lot.
Okay.
it's cut off here.
Yeah, it's kind of to the left of Tollentine. I don't know the name of the engineering building on the left there, but
So this is it right here.
Yeah.
yeah. So there's some kind of a footpath, and it looks like it may even go around that parking lot. So the intention is to eliminate that?
Yes.
And eliminate access to that?
Yeah.
Okay, because clearly that would become
Cut through.
where the students flow.
Right.
Flow like water down that path. Thank you. Last question. So I have a question about the overall design, and we did bring this up at the last hearing. It's been asserted that the majority of the students will traverse from the south side across Lancaster to the north side at the bridge, because a lot of the student destinations were studied and looked at. So I don't know, 60 to 70% of the students will be heading in that northwest direction. So why is the largest retail space being located on the far east side at Ithan Avenue? If the majority of the students are planning to cross at, if you imagine, heading west, and then over the bridge north, and then further north and/or west, you have a 9,500 square foot retail space. If I'm wrong on that, correct me if I'm wrong on that. I think that's what it was. Located directly, and it was architecturally, or I should say, it was designed into the project at that location. Can you explain the reason for that location and why it was designed into that location?
I think the location actually is one of those things that served both students and people from, they expected people from outside, and that's a more convenient location with a parking structure there. For people from outside.
From outside.
Parents visiting.
And someone attending a game, something like that.
Perhaps people attending a game, alumni who happen to be on campus, that sort of thing.
So if we have 5,000 visitors to a game, if 10% of those decide to go to that store to buy a jersey or a shirt or something else, 500 people would be crossing Eighth Avenue. During an event.
Suspect that 500
potentially.
people would, potentially 500 people
number.
would be parking in the garage to go to the event. So.
Yeah. So would we really want to encourage, is that sound design principle to encourage more traffic at that location? Or, would it be better to discourage that or locate that retail activity either at the stadium or at the garage or somewhere on the east side?
The difficult crossing point is not Ithan. The difficult crossing point is Lancaster, and I don't think that's adding to crossings of Lancaster in that location. So.
Yeah, we'll discuss that, I guess, with the traffic engineers. I think they may have a different opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, no further questions. Thank you.
All right, I had a couple questions. Going back, first of all, to the bridge, if you could zoom in on the bridge area right there. I'll take the bridge first. Well, actually, you had the right plan. I just wanted you to blow it up a little bit. There you go. Just make it bigger. And it was pointed out that there's no elevator, Mr. Smith, correct? No elevator at that stair in the middle there.
No.
It's a stair, and then there's the ramp, and there's another stair over there by the railroad. One of the points that was brought up was that a lot of people are not going to want to come down from their dorm, walk downstairs, and then walk upstairs to go in the crossover. I think Mr. Leonardi, I think, showed me a novel approach to that from the second story. Did you try to work out any kind of a second story access from the dorms to the bridge? And do you think it's feasible?
Just the idea of 6 buildings and one building happened to having a access to the bridge doesn't seem like very good security planning. And the idea is to bring people to the ground where they naturally would go anyway, and then have them go up all together at one point. It doesn't seem it's not really any different to have people come down to the ground, go into another building, and then go up in a stair inside someone else's dorm. That doesn't seem very logical to me.
Yeah, I have 2 college-age boys, and they're not real good. They're not generally going to want to walk down the stairs, walk up the stairs, walk across, and then walk down. That's just not what they do, I don't think. I think they're going to try to scramble across and jump over fences or whatever. So the answer to that question is no, you don't think that, you don't want to have any access from any of the second-story areas.
It is literally one building with a small portion of the number of beds. It would involve going upstairs from the first floor and downstairs from the 3rd and 4th floors. It doesn't. In my view, it doesn't add to the practicality of the bridge, and it does create a serious security issue for people going through dorms, which want to recognize the people that are inside your building.
Right, and again, the concern that was registered to me is that it's going to be difficult to get the kids to do that, and they're going to want to cross over, especially because of that, it was previously open. Right there, you can see the path next to the bridge on the right-hand side. All right, could you zoom out on that again? Zoom out on that same drawing. Okay, and go over to the right, all the way to east to the parking garage. All right, now zoom in on the intersection, the in and out at the lower end of Ithan Avenue. That's right, there you go. Back out just a little bit, please. All right. Now, we have an elevation of that side of the building, and it is, so I kind of want you to flip between these elevations. This one is the Ithan Avenue parking garage elevation, and that really is showing the Ithan Avenue view in that direction eastward. There it is, right there. And you see on the right-hand side of this elevation, you see right above your cursor there, that's where that in and out, I guess that's the exit, I guess that's where it is. And then right to the right of that there's a tower, a stair tower. That seems to be set back in the rendering, but when you look at the plan view, it seems to be bumped out, similar to the stair tower on the left side. Is that inaccurate, or is this still conceptual or changing, or is there something different in the plan?
Yeah, you're very perceptive to see that this elevation is a little older than the plans, and the new elevations, which we're happy to share with you at the next hearing, are going a little farther in the direction that Commissioner Fisher suggests, a little more building-like. So there's actually two towers. There's a tower for people and a tower that is the car entrance in and out, and a little more stone, a little more architectural feeling to the garage.
Okay, so basically this is to be modified and redone.
We are.
This elevation parking garage, Ithan Avenue, is really going to be modified.
Yeah.
Now, if you could just come out a little bit more on that, and getting back to John's question, well, that's too much. No, go back.
Tell me where to go.
I want to look at that retail space that Commissioner Fisher addressed. 10,000 square feet of retail. Is there a bar, a club in there, or is that just clothing? What's in the retail? Do we know, or is that to be determined?
That is yet to be determined. So,
I think that more so than buying the shirts, they're going to have people going over to the bar that's in there, right?
Restaurant.
Okay. Mr. Kowaleski provided me with some information in the past about the Villanova and the amounts that Villanova contributes to the township. And in those materials, he indicated that there is business privilege tax paid by the Villanova University of about $50,000 or so a year. Is the retail activity here subject to Radnor business privilege and mercantile tax?
I don't know. But
perhaps one of the people in your group would know.
Could testify to that effect.
You're going to have someone else who's going to be addressing this at a later date. Is that correct?
When will that be, and who will be addressing
Well, I was hoping to have it tonight, but it doesn't look like we're going to get there. So it'll probably be next meeting.
Who will? Well,
we have an economist that you have his CV there, and we've already disclosed that he'll be.
Well, can he just answer that one question right now while he's
I
here?
would prefer that he answer the question when he's going to testify.
Okay. Any particular reason why not just say yes or no?
That's the way you normally work with proceeding.
Okay.
You
All
present
right.
your witnesses in order.
I guess we don't want to be adversarial here. I just thought we're trying to work together, Nick, I guess. No further questions, although my last question wasn't answered, so we'll pick that up again. Thank you.
Yeah, I have one question. Someone traveling west on Lancaster from Ithan to 320, if They would, now they have a sort of an outlet at Church Walk. Under this plan, their only outlet would be to cross the street. Otherwise, they would have no outlet between Ithan and 320. Is that correct?
That's basically right, yeah.
And that's preferable to some kind of outlet that would allow a pedestrian on the north side to have an outlet north onto campus?
Well, they can come across the street and go up, go across the bridge if they want to go and then come back out
Okay.
at the corner of 320.
And will you maintain the crosswalk then?
There's probably going to need to be a crosswalk if
Yeah,
there's a bus.
so there's a
if
crosswalk there
right,
now.
Right.
So that outlet, then the crosswalk would become the outlet.
It would be a way to get across and onto the bridge, yeah.
Very good. And it won't be an afterthought. It will be a crosswalk, a dedicated crosswalk, or will it?
Again, these are the sort of things that our traffic folks would talk about in greater detail because it's something that has to be worked out with PennDOT, among others, exactly where that is and how it's signalized and so on. But I think the thought is, particularly if there's a bus stop, there would need to be a crosswalk.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? I just have two. Your firm is designing all the dorm buildings, the art center, the parking garage, and the bridge. Is that correct?
Yes, my firm, together with John Kluver's firm.
And there's no structures that you're not designing that are part of this plan?
No, there aren't.
And the bridge, just to clarify, it is going to be covered with the stone the entire length until it becomes the SEPTA bridge. Is that correct?
It will have pieces of stone, yeah.
Okay.
It won't be a
Will
concrete.
you see, will the facade of that bridge switch from a stone to some other type of facade like concrete or stucco or something?
No, it's going to be stone.
It'll be
piers.
stone the whole
Yeah,
time?
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Caniglia, do you have any redirect at this
No, I
point?
do not.
Okay. We've reached a point of 9:30. I've had one commissioner state that he really can't stay past that. So I think at this point, we are going to continue the hearing. Mr. Caniglia, you're going to be calling your economist as the next witness, is that correct?
Yes, the economist will be called. The economist would be called as the next witness. Mr. Kluver would be called, and Mr. Tavani, the traffic expert, would be called as well.
And I believe, in my understanding, is the next meeting has been set. It is Wednesday, September 10th at 6:30. And then there is a second meeting that's already set, which is Wednesday, September 17th at 6:30. Is that correct? Does everyone agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And I do believe Mr. Rice will be at both of those meetings. Not that I haven't enjoyed this, but thank you all, and have a safe trip home.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, how are you?